This is the Candidly Kim podcast.
And welcome back to the Candidly Kim podcast. We're going to take on voter and election fraud tonight.
No, there's no such thing.
Says our awesome producer, Doran Barton. Okay, let's just start with this. 40% of Americans believe that the election was rigged. 40%. Okay, that's startling. That's Reuters. That's not Fox News. That's Reuters. Very, very troubling. I think we're seeing that number grow every day. I know it exists. I've seen it. So I want to distinguish between election fraud, which is systemic, versus voter fraud, which is an individual or group of individuals. But I have seen firsthand the voter fraud.
Okay.
And I think I alluded to it in a previous podcast that I did go with a group to another state, and this is being adjudicated. So I'm still going to withhold some of my comments here. But I had a list of voters that looked suspicious for whatever reason, and knocked on some doors and asked to speak to the voter. And I learned that the voter didn't live there. And frequent comments were, I don't know who that is. I've lived here for years. I've been here for 4 years. Maybe that's someone who lived here before me. But I spent a good 2 solid days knocking doors. Every door I knocked on but 2. It was fraudulent voting.
So hundreds, maybe thousands of you personally, votes that you personally saw were...
Well, so me personally, it takes time to go knock on a door, talk to somebody, get in a car, drive, maybe a couple blocks to the next one.
Okay.
But me personally, dozens.
Okay.
Dozens for the 2 days. I did have 2 doors that they said, oh, the person's not here right now, but I really couldn't tell because sometimes that door's shutting on you. So I didn't know if those people had moved or not, but they weren't there at the time. But some of these went along the lines of, there was one that I knocked on his door and said, is so-and-so here? And he says, no, he hasn't, lived here for 7 years. And they said he's lived in California for 7 years. We bought the house from him 7 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And I said, well, I have a record that he voted by mail from this address. Well, then the guy gets a little upset and he goes, dang it, I know he votes for Biden. He would vote for Biden. And he says, that's not right. That guy doesn't live here. He lives in California. It's not right that he should vote in our elections. But he did have contact information for the guy. And later on contacted me and said, yeah, sure enough, he said he voted. He voted from California and he voted for Biden. And so we've talked a little bit about our thoughts about the security of vote by mail. And of course, the president and his team was very, very antagonistic toward vote by mail. But, we had our own Amelia Gardner, Utah County elections official, the county clerk and auditor, and she's not so concerned about vote by mail.
Well, it seems like Utah at least does it better than other states. I didn't feel like people in Utah had that many concerns about the vote by mail.
Well, Utah County does it right.
Okay.
So it starts by purging your voter rolls.
Oh, okay.
So you can't have somebody who's lived in California for 7 years.
Makes sense.
You can't have deceased people if you're purging.
How often do you purge? Like every year?
Well, Amelia was elected 2 years ago, so I think about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, but I believe it's a constant. It's a constant thing. So she is always comparing her voter rolls to national databases that reflect people moving. And I know that's part of it, as she's discussed it. So, but Salt Lake County doesn't.
Really?
Salt Lake County is our Democrat stronghold county in the state. Really, I think the only one. And so it matters how you do it. So Amelia's doing it the right way.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. But in our county, in Salt Lake County where we live, I'm not so sure. But I'll tell you another thing they do in Salt Lake County is they are the only voting system, the only county, the only government in our state that uses Dominion election software.
Oh, great.
Dominion systems. Okay. So I'm all on the Dominion did crazy stuff. Or the Dominion system allowed crazy stuff to happen in this election. I mean, you can't deny it. You can't deny it. So, I'll be canceled as a crazy now, because I question COVID stats and election fraud. But clearly, I think more and more people are believing that this election was rigged. That 40% is high.
Yeah.
And that the Biden team or the deep state or the both or the Democrats or whoever stole this election. Very, very likely stole this election. And we're changing the defense of the Democrats is changing. They're changing the words they use. But they were saying, well, there's no proof of election fraud. And what is it they're saying today? This one was a little bit different. I can't remember, but the problem may be that it may be difficult to prove. We may be out of time to prove it, but I think there is growing sentiment that something was wrong. So, Doran, you're a tech guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, how about all these tech guys coming out of the woodwork on just anomalies in data patterns?
Right. Yeah, the mathematicians that are running the numbers and showing, that some of the things we've seen in this election are just statistically highly improbable.
So really, can election data work with numbers and formulas and it seems like election data would just be so randomly happening. But there are just some universal laws of data distribution.
Right.
The thing that I like to tell my kids when they struggle with math is I kind of had a math light bulb click on for me when I had an awesome math teacher, Mr. Childress, in high school in Louisiana, and there was a time where I just struggled, and then all of a sudden, math appeared as beautiful and perfect. And then I went to college, and once again, I struggled with statistics until my mother-in-law said, think with the opposite side of your brain. You got to think left brain. And then all of a sudden, I saw that statistics is just another universal law of perfection and beauty. And I know that sounds weird, but I tell my kids when they're struggling, math is perfect. It's one of the things that is perfect. Yeah. Math is perfect.
Yeah, I get that.
And there's something about that to me that is just beautiful. So I'm a data harmonizer. I'm not a statistician. I'm a harmonizer. And so I get the world of data. Math has to make sense. And then all of a sudden you have a bunch of MIT professors, mathematicians, who come out and say, we have big anomalies in the data. Big anomalies in the data. And I think you probably have some segment of the population who says, yeah, you can't apply math to the only math in elections is counting, right? But there are statistical distributions and likelihoods and regression formulas where any data distribution is going to live by some universal laws of perfect math.
Right. And the statistical trends, you pretty much all the numbers are going to obey certain trends in naturally occurring data. And there may be some outliers, but there's always a trend.
Right. And so that's what you kind of look for, are these trends. So all of a sudden we have these MIT guys, these scientists coming out and starting to weigh in on this. We also have a local hometown.
Is this the Overstock guy?
Patrick Byrne.
Oh, okay.
So even Patrick Byrne has weighed in on this and looked at the tech side of things, both statistical anomalies and can Dominion systems be hacked? Were they hacked? And so we have all these all the tech world now coming out on this.
But I'm sure he only cares about this because he's a Trump lover.
I don't really know.
I say that because I heard him say he didn't even vote for Trump. He voted for the Libertarian candidate. He voted for Jorgensen.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that would be consistent. I think that would make sense to me. But so first they were saying that, Dominion was not connected to the internet. Now we know better. Arizona held hearings with a group of legislators yesterday. Fascinating to hear some of the testimony. There were scientists, Homeland Security, tech experts who had absolutely damning testimony. If you have a chance to look at that.
Well, you still can.
You still can. Bannon's War Room. If you're not watching that, that's pretty interesting. Bannon's War Room covered a lot of that yesterday too. And it doesn't make sense in any world. And then we heard from poll watchers and the anomalies that they saw. Today was crazy. Was it Pennsylvania? Or was it Michigan? It was Pennsylvania.
I think it was Michigan.
Michigan. But UPS, I'm sorry, not UPS, USPS drivers that were loading boxes and boxes of pre-filled out ballots from one state to go to another state, from New York in particular to go to Pennsylvania, and asking a supervisor, what's up with this? And some of the responses that people have gotten from elections officials on the poll watching side, being denied access, seeing anomalies. There's one lady tonight I heard on Fox News, her story about she did provisional ballots that had problems. And so these were ballots where you have to make sort of a human judgment, and it was a team of people. But she said there were a number of ballots that just had lots of ballots that didn't have a presidential candidate filled out. But, they filled out other races. So, apparently they didn't choose a candidate in those cases. But she said every one of those, the elections officials filled in Biden on those. I mean, these things just start adding up, and they're not just anecdotal. These are real people. Every one of these people signed legal affidavits with penalty of perjury, $5,000 penalty, federal offense, felony crimes to falsify this kinds of information on an affidavit. And I signed like I said, I think a couple dozen affidavits myself when I found that people had voted from a residence that they didn't live at, and in a lot of these cases lived in another state, another county, and were voting.
Yeah, I saw one woman that testified to the committee in Arizona who was working at a polling station and was handling the provisional ballots. So people were coming in and saying, "I want to vote," and they were basically, it's like same day voter registration. And so she would call the elections officials. She got to where she was calling the elections officials every time to make sure that these voters were good to vote. And what she determined, there was a pattern to whether she was being told, yes, let them vote, or no, don't let them vote. And it was, if they're Democrat, let them vote. And if they're Republican, don't let them vote.
And some of this was done by profiling. In some of the cases that I've heard about, if they would decide that they thought that this person looks like they're more likely to vote, and I don't know how you do that kind of profiling. I mean, if you have a MAGA hat, okay, I know who you are. Turns out Sharpiegate is real.
Really?
And this is something that was so frustrating to me because you just don't know what to believe sometimes. So I start getting, all these messages about, oh, did you hear about the Sharpies? The Sharpies, if you used a Sharpie, your ballot was invalidated, and
but they were handing out
they
Sharpies.
only gave Sharpies to Republicans. And so instantly, next day, I mean, it's like trending. And the next day, there's all these articles that
it's conspiracy theory.
It's a conspiracy. There are no issues with Sharpies. Sharpies do not affect the ballots. And guess where we are now? Oh, yeah, Sharpies do affect the ballots. And they know this. And so that we have, again, cancel culture on
facts. Yeah.
On facts, on the election fraud. Well, and voter fraud. The bags of flash drives. The 3 a.m., everybody stops counting, and then there's massive dumps that are almost exclusively Biden, and then things shift incredibly. So I think where we are, we have had, I would say the Trump team has had a lot of good successes in the court. Some things they have not prevailed on in the court, but I think that, there's still more to see. The most important thing is that we have integrity in our elections.
Right. That's the one thing that I keep thinking is, even if nothing changes, can we at least make sure that things like what we saw this year don't ever happen again?
Well, absolutely, that has to be moving forward. That has to be a question. But I do think we need to get to the bottom of whether there was enough fraud to impact the outcome. We have a lot of places that the questionable ballots are definitely in the margin of changing.
Yeah.
What appears to be an outcome. One thing I don't like is that, a lot of the headlines, a lot of the media refers to this as Trump's attempts to reverse the election. The election is not settled yet.
Right.
It really isn't. So
what? You mean AP doesn't decide who the next president is?
And the media. And so I think more than just, let's make sure this doesn't ever happen again. I still think we're in the space that we better make sure that the outcome reflects the will of the voters.
Right.
And I don't trust that anymore. Well, I don't know that I have it all.
Right. And there's that whole issue of, are we getting the information, or is it being held from us because that's not the right truth to expose? That's
right. Well, so very interesting to see a lot of great cases making it through the courts. And I don't know if by the next podcast, if we'll be any closer to knowing what's going on, but just mathematical anomalies that, these are things that really in the past have held up in court. One of these is a Benford analysis, which can't be exactly applied as to elections, but it is one that is typically an indicator of likely fraud, potential fraud. It's used in the accounting world to look for fraudulent accounting, and it is very heavily relied upon and is used in court. But for elections, not so much. Not so much a prover of fraud, but it is an indicator of fraud. That's all
So
over the place.
if it's one of many indicators, but the question is who makes the decisions? I mean, it sounds like we have until December 14th. That's when the states are expected
Right.
to send electors to represent the electoral votes for that state. And I guess the state legislatures are the ones that authorize that. And if there is a lack of confidence in the certified vote count, what options do the state legislatures have?
And I don't remember voting for this in 2016, and I was in the legislature, so I think this is only.
Is it only that the state
there's-
legislature has the option of kind of saying, "Hey, we're not sure we want to go along with the certified vote count"?
So it sounds like that's what it can come down to in some of
Okay.
the states, yesterday in the middle of these hearings, voter and elections fraud, Arizona Governor Ducey went ahead and certified the election. That doesn't mean it's over. That doesn't mean that's locked up for Arizona.
Right.
So some of these cases will still continue through. One of the states is challenging the fact that the governor changed elections law impacting federal races unilaterally without legislative consent. The U.S. Constitution, it vests that authority strictly in state legislatures. I don't see how the court can find any differently on that, because that was a direct violation of the U.S. Constitution, and it did apparently have an impact on the outcome. And I've asked about our own state. Our governor changed election law in federal races, and the legislature did not sanction that or after the fact change the law. So I have a question about that too. But anyway, so we've got a march of all kinds of people on this. So your kind of your everyday poll watchers, your neighbors who do this, elections judges and poll watchers, and they're sharing their stories now. And our math geniuses and statisticians that are saying this just isn't right. To boxes shipped from one state to another with filled out ballots. It's just endless. So much. I think every day it gets harder to deny that something funny didn't go on. So
Right.
I'm on the side of Biden stole the election. The Democrats stole the election. Definitely rigged. Where are you? Are you one of the 40%ers?
I'm still out on whether there was enough fraud that Biden didn't win. But it seems to me that some of the reports coming out of Pennsylvania, at least, saying that 23,000 mail-in ballots were counted before they were even mailed out. That just, if I was in some capacity of leadership there, I would say, now wait a minute. This was where? Let's look at we should be auditing that area, that precinct, that city, that county, whatever. We should be looking at that, because that is not right.
Yeah, and the fact that the Dominion systems allows for fraction counting votes. So, last I looked, it's one person, one vote, not one and a quarter. There's all kinds of crazy things anyway. But this is so important. to
Yeah,
our republic.
it is.
We've got to get this right. So, I mean, we really do. It needs to be more than just let's fix it moving forward. It needs to be. It needs to be fixed now, or we need to be able to determine. But that just may be where we are. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's not enough time. Maybe there, might not be enough political will, because if 100,000 votes were fraudulent, do you throw out the other 4 million in your state? And so those have got to be tough decisions for people up the chain to the Supreme Court.
Right.
But an election should have integrity. It should
Right.
absolutely have. It's one thing that separates us from a lot of other countries. And sadly, 40% of the people don't trust it anymore. So
That is sad.
that is sad. Anyway, well, thank you for joining us tonight again on our Candidly Kim podcast, and coming to you twice a week,
Give or take, yeah.
give or take.
And if you have questions or comments about the election, what are your thoughts? Let us know in some comments.
Let us know, and share your sources too before they get scrubbed. Message me. Find us on Facebook. Find us on coming to Spotify, Podbean. We're on Podbean, iTunes, YouTube, the Candidly Kim podcast,
And Rumble.
and Rumble. That's right. We're on Rumble now.
Yes.
We're on Rumble now. Also, let's chat. So also find me in social media. Still hanging out on Twitter, and we're also on.
Are you on Parler yet?
I'm on Parler. Been on Parler for a long time. So
Oh, okay.
welcome to the Parler party. Still trying to figure it out. But Twitter world is sure lighting up right now with the election fraud and waiting to hear outcomes for some of these
But
cases.
don't go looking for Sidney Powell. You won't be able to find her on Twitter.
You can't find Sidney Powell. You got to dig for Sidney Powell. And
I wonder why that is. Wonder why Twitter would make it difficult to find her stuff on
Sidney
Twitter.
Powell.
That's
Yeah. Anyway, please give us a like, a share, and a follow if you can. Again, we'd love to hear from you. And thanks again for joining us on the Candidly Kim podcast. Thank you, Dawn Barton, for producing.